What if I told you the United States is already defaulting on its $38 trillion debt, and almost nobody has noticed? There was no press conference, no emergency broadcast interrupting your favorite show, no red sirens flashing across your screen. Life just kept moving. Groceries still on the shelves, paychecks still hitting accounts, markets still pretending everything is fine. But behind the scenes, something historic is happening. Not a collapse you can see, not a crash you can trade, a silent erasing of promises happening quietly in the background of your daily life. It isn't coming from Congress. It isn't coming from Wall Street. It's happening inside your own bank account. Because the United States isn't actually trying to pay back this debt in real terms. It's letting the value of the dollar do the dirty work. Each year your savings buy a little less. Each month your paycheck stretches a little thinner. Each trip to the store feels slightly more expensive than the last, and nobody can quite explain why. This isn't an accident. It isn't mismanagement. It's the escape plan. America isn't facing its $38 trillion problem head on. It's shrinking it in the shadows. And here's the part nobody likes to admit. You're the one funding the whole operation. But that wasn't always the plan. The national debt used to be a political scarecrow, a big, ugly number politicians pointed at every 4 years, warned about for 30 seconds on a debate stage, then quietly ignored the moment the cameras shut off. But something changed. That number didn't just grow. It mutated. It blew past $30 trillion like it wasn't even there, tore through $35 trillion, and now it's charging toward $38 trillion with no breaks in sight. A number so large it no longer feels real, like a scoreboard in a video game that never stops climbing. To even imagine it, you have to leave reality behind. Stack $38 trillion in $1 bills, and the pile doesn't just reach the moon, it overshoots it, drifting into empty space like a monument to financial denial. For decades, economists waved it away. We owe it to ourselves. The economy will grow out of it. Deficits don't matter. That comforting story died quietly in 2024. Because for the first time ever, the United States government started spending more money paying interest on its past than protecting its future. More than the entire military, more than Medicaid. Nearly $1 trillion a year, just to keep old promises alive. No new schools, no better roads, no safer borders, just interest. This is the moment everything flipped. When your interest bill becomes larger than your ability to fix the problem, the math stops being theoretical. It becomes predatory. The debt stops being a statistic and starts behaving like a living thing, feeding on the budget, growing faster the more you try to sustain it. At that point, the problem is no longer how much you owe. It's how long you can survive before the system turns on itself. And that's when governments make choices they never admit to the public. In your own life, debt has limits. When the bills stack too high, you cut back. You cancel the subscriptions you forgot you even had. You stop eating out. You make uncomfortable choices because reality eventually forces your hand. But a government doesn't get that moment of clarity. Huge portions of U.S. spending are locked in by law. Social Security, Medicare, federal benefits promised decades ago to a population that's now retiring all at once. Touching them isn't just unpopular, it's political S-side. Careers end overnight. So what about taxes? To truly fix the problem, income taxes wouldn't just rise, they'd have to explode. Think double for most workers. Think tax rates creeping toward levels nobody would tolerate. That isn't reform. That's a guaranteed landslide defeat. So the system takes the only path that doesn't immediately collapse it. It borrows more. Not to build, not to invest, not to grow, just to pay the interest on the debt it already owes. This is the moment the trap snaps shut. It's like opening a brand new credit card just to make the minimum payment on the old one. It feels like you're staying afloat, but every swipe digs the hole deeper. The debt gets bigger, the interest bill rises, which forces even more borrowing next year, and the cycle feeds on itself. This isn't financial management. It's a runaway feedback loop, a system that no longer moves forward, only in circles. So when cutting is impossible, and default would destroy everything, what option is left when the math stops working? At this level of debt, history is brutally honest. Every nation that's ever reached this point has only had 3 ways out. Austerity, explicit default, or the one nobody admits to, the soft default. Austerity means slashing benefits, crushing the economy, and triggering instant unrest. Explicit default means telling the world you're not paying, a move that would detonate the entire global financial system. So both are untouchable. That leaves the third door. They don't refuse to pay the debt. They pay it in weaker money. Every dollar gets delivered right on time. It just buys less than it used to. This is called financial repression. It sounds technical, but the mechanism is brutally simple. If inflation quietly runs at 5% while the government only pays 3% on its debt, then every year the real value of what it owes shrinks. On tens of trillions of dollars, that erases more than $1 trillion in real terms annually, without a single tax hike, without a single budget cut. No drama, no protests, just erosion. Bondholders still receive their payments, but the purchasing power behind those payments is hollowed out. Your groceries creep higher, your rent jumps again, your savings account starts to feel like it's leaking, and the headlines give you harmless explanations. Supply chain problems, temporary inflation, post-pandemic distortions. But this isn't temporary, it's engineered. And it quietly shifts the entire financial system into a new phase, one where protecting the currency is no longer the priority. Survival is. For most of modern history, the Federal Reserve played the role of the responsible adult. When inflation flared up, it raised interest rates, even if that meant markets screamed and recessions followed. And when the economy ran too hot, it tapped the brakes, paying now to avoid disaster later. But that discipline depended on one thing, a government that could survive higher rates. That world no longer exists. Today, the debt is so large that real rate hikes aren't just uncomfortable, they're lethal. If interest rates return to the levels seen in the 1980s, the bill on nearly $38 trillion in debt would explode into the trillions every single year, more than the government even collects in taxes. So the Fed is boxed in. It can't do what it was built to do. It can't crush inflation without crushing the Treasury. It can't protect the dollar without bankrupting the state, so it compromises. It tolerates inflation. It keeps rates lower than reality demands. It quietly shifts from guardian of the currency to life support system for government spending. This shift has a name, fiscal dominance. It's the moment the central bank stops asking what's best for the economy and starts asking what keeps the government solvent. And once that switch flips, money printing is no longer an emergency measure. It becomes infrastructure. The printer doesn't shut off after the fire is out. It stays fused to the budget. But there's still a problem. If global investors don't want to lend cheaply anymore, how do you keep interest rates from exploding? You don't convince them. You force them. Tool number 1, the captive buyer. In a real market, risk has consequences. If a borrower is drowning in debt and spending wildly, lenders demand a higher return. They say, "You're dangerous, pay me more." But the United States can't afford that conversation. So instead of negotiating with the market, it built one that isn't allowed to say no. Through a maze of regulations most people never hear about, banks, insurance companies, and pension funds are required to hold U.S. Treasury bonds. These rules classify government debt as a high-quality liquid asset, meaning financial institutions literally cannot operate unless they stockpile it. It doesn't matter if those bonds pay next to nothing. It doesn't matter if inflation is shredding their real value. They must buy them. This is no longer investing, it's compliance. Your bank doesn't load up on treasuries because they believe in the future of the dollar. Your pension fund doesn't hold them because they're a smart bet. They do it because regulators have turned government debt into a mandatory product, the financial equivalent of oxygen masks in an airplane. Take them off, and the system isn't allowed to fly. That forced demand holds interest rates down even when the debt load screams danger. But controlling who buys the debt is only half the trick. To finish the job, they also have to control what inflation looks like on paper. Tool nerd 2, the broken inflation gauge. Billions of dollars in government promises are tied to one number: CPI, the Consumer Price Index, Social Security checks, federal pensions, inflation-protected bonds. If CPI rises, the government has to pay more. If CPI stays low, it saves billions. So over the last 40 years, CPI hasn't been adjusted for accuracy. It's been redesigned for affordability. Since the 1980s, the formula has been quietly rewritten in ways that almost no one outside academic circles understands. When steak prices explode, the index assumes you'll substitute to hamburger. So instead of recording the real cost of your old lifestyle, it records the cost of your downgrade. That's called substitution bias. When a new car costs thousands more but includes a backup camera or better software, CPI doesn't count it as inflation. The price hike is smoothed away because the product is better. That's called hedonic adjustment. Together, these tricks make it look like your cost of living is stable while your standard of living is collapsing. Your grocery bill is higher, your rent eats more of your paycheck. But the official numbers shrug. If CPI were calculated today using the rules from 1980, inflation wouldn't look mildly uncomfortable. It would look like a crisis. The government isn't just shrinking the debt, it's rewriting the scoreboard. But even fake inflation numbers and captive buyers can't solve one final threat. What happens when the rest of the world decides it's done funding the illusion? Tool number 3, QE and the everything bubble. When foreign governments quietly started backing away from U.S. debt, a dangerous question surfaced. If China, Japan, and global investors don't want to fund America anymore, who will? The answer was simple: the Federal Reserve. It became the buyer of last resort, not with savings, not with surplus revenue, but with brand new money created out of thin air. This is quantitative easing. The Fed prints dollars to buy government bonds no one else wants. That artificial demand pushes interest rates down, keeps the Treasury solvent, and injects trillions into the financial system. On paper, it looks like stability. In reality, it's a flood. And that flood doesn't reach you first. It hits Wall Street. Banks, hedge funds, and asset managers get the fresh money before prices adjust. They use it to buy stocks, real estate, tech companies, anything that can absorb the surge. By the time that money trickles down into paychecks, the damage is already done. Home prices are higher. Rents have jumped. The stock market feels untouchable. This is the Cantillon effect, the invisible engine behind modern inequality. The people closest to the money printer gain wealth before inflation arrives. Everyone else only sees the higher prices. That's why the top 10% feels richer every year, while the bottom 90% feels like they're running in place. The national debt isn't being paid off by taxes. It's being erased by quietly draining the middle class. And once you understand this, you realize something disturbing. The rules of survival have changed. For most of your parents' lives, the formula was straightforward. Work hard. Save a little from every paycheck. Buy government bonds. Let time do the rest. That strategy built the middle class, but it only worked in a world where money actually held its value. That world is gone. Today, cash doesn't protect you, it bleeds you slowly. And government bonds, once considered untouchable, now lock in guaranteed loss when inflation runs hotter than the interest they pay. The safest choices on paper have become the most dangerous in reality. So to avoid falling behind, people are being pushed into places they never planned to go. The stock market, real estate, crypto, anything with a chance to outrun the shrinking dollar, not because they want to gamble, because standing still has become financial S-side. The system has quietly transformed saving into a losing strategy and speculation into a survival skill. And just when it feels like the risk can't get any higher, the final tool is waiting in the wings. A change so powerful, it doesn't just bend the rules, it rewrites them. Right now, there's still one tiny lever of freedom left in the system. If interest rates ever go negative, if the bank starts charging you just to hold your own money, you can walk in, pull out cash, and step outside the machine. That physical cash is the last escape hatch. A central bank digital currency closes it. With a fully digital dollar, there is no opting out. Rates don't change next quarter. They change instantly. Your balance doesn't earn less. It shrinks by design. Your money doesn't wait patiently. It can be programmed. A 1% monthly deduction to stimulate spending. Expiration dates that tell you to use your savings or watch them vanish. Spending limits that decide where, when, and how fast your money can move. Not by policy debates, by software updates. This isn't science fiction. Digital currencies are already being tested around the world, quietly building the framework for a system where money isn't just tracked, it's controlled. And once physical cash disappears, there's no mattress to hide under. No withdrawal, no protest, no alternative. At that point, the debt crisis stops being a financial problem. It becomes a question of obedience. The United States isn't preparing for a dramatic collapse. There won't be a single day where the system shuts down and everyone suddenly knows the game is over. What's coming is quieter than that. Polite, orderly, almost invisible. A decade of steady 4 or 5% inflation doesn't feel like disaster. It feels manageable. It feels like the new normal. But over time, it quietly erases half the real value of the national debt and half the value of everything you've worked to save. Not through riots, not through emergency laws, through math. Your money won't vanish overnight. It will just stop working the way it used to. Each year, your savings buy a little less. Each raise feels smaller. Each milestone gets pushed a little farther away. And the official numbers will keep telling you everything is fine. No alarms, no accountability, just friendly headlines explaining why this year's losses are temporary. The debt won't be confronted, it won't be defeated, it will be quietly forgotten. And the only real question left is this. Do you see it happening while there's still time to think differently? Or do you wake up one day and realize your future was erased so slowly you never felt it disappear?